hasn't actually filmed a decent video for once. Hi guys, it's Alison, and I asked you guys again on Instagram what you wanted to see, and I tell you, I got a lot of votes for this topic. And before I go into it, I just want to say two things. Number one, obvious trigger warning for mentions of self-harm and suicide and stuff like that. There's other videos you can watch and I will link them to you, so please don't trigger yourself. Second thing I want to say is a little disclaimer. I know the title of the video is a little bit misleading. BPD did not give me trauma. I had trauma before it. A significant portion of the traumas that I have do stem from BPD. So it gave me some trauma, but it didn't give me all trauma. So yeah, we're gonna get into the video now. The topic is basically BPD and trauma, and a personal story of how these two diagnoses really link together for me. So a little bit of background context is that in my whole entire life I have been in 5 relationships. With my first relationship, it didn't end well. With my second relationship, it didn't end well. You can guess how the other 3 went. Basically, my luck with relationships is not the best. They don't end well. First relationship didn't end well, and I ended up self-harming as an aftermath to this because of the obvious heartbreak and anger and negative feelings. Okay, so a pigeon just wants to like attack my window outside? What? Okay, I'd say it was just like any normal breakup, but it's not normal to self-harm because of a breakup. So, second relationship followed quite a similar path, except there was a bit more of an aftermath. So there was the depression and the anger and the confusion and just a lot of mixed emotions. That pigeon is going to actually die in a minute. There was a lot of anger at first after this relationship was ending. There was a lot of sadness, a lot of betrayal, mistrust, distrust, whatever the word is. And then there was some confusion. This relationship ended with me being depressed, which is normal to feel negative emotions after, a relationship breakup. But after this particular relationship, I felt quite isolated from the world. That's actually when my dissociation really started to kick in. I had a lot of memory blackouts. I felt really isolated, and I just, as well as being pushed away from society, I was pushing society away as well. So it was like a double effect. I felt I was being isolated, but I was also isolating myself at the same time because of how I felt. Looking back, that's probably where it started, because in my third relationship, I didn't actually open up about my mental health to my partner at the time. For me, why are there so many seagulls? Why is nature out? Go home. So yeah, it's a bit odd that I didn't open up, and the reason why I didn't open up is because I was scared that because of my mental health and how bad it was getting, because at this time it was getting worse and worse, I was scared that I would scare them off and they would run off and they would leave. So I had this subconscious fear of rejection to the point where I didn't disclose that I was struggling, and when they found out, they were very upset that they didn't know. It's not that I didn't trust them, I just was afraid that they would leave. Throughout that third relationship, I had a constant fear that they were going to leave me and abandon me, and if they didn't reply in a certain amount of time, my head would go into really bad places. It would be like, oh, they hate me, they're leaving me, something's happened to them, they're dead, and a lot of distressing thoughts, and I was basically torturing my own mind because I was thinking such horrible things when really they were just asleep or they were out with their family. You know, as I am sometimes. Sometimes I'm falling asleep, sometimes I'm out with my family. Yet when it's the other way around, suddenly it's not okay for the Alison brain. So that was an indefinite struggle. And then one day they just stopped replying, and I knew immediately, like it was only like 5 minutes without any reply, and I was like, something's happened. And something did happen. I'm not gonna disclose what, but something happened, and the things that I was told during that time from my partner and their friends and family, and the comments that were made on why certain things happened, really got to me a lot. It was actually those sort of conversations which led me to have like a massive breakdown and end up in professional treatments. So yeah, I was really shaken up and distraught, and I just couldn't stop thinking about them and how the relationship ended. I just felt awful. That's all there is to say about it. I just, without going into details and disclosing private information, I felt awful. I noticed a pattern that I would get into a relationship with someone, be so scared of them leaving or abandoning me or some sort of conflict happening, and then whenever there was a threat or a perceived threat of that person leaving me or rejecting me or having conflict with me, I would freak out and I would go into a very dark place mentally. That relationship in particular, I guess, was the catalyst because it really shook me up, and I was really affected. Whenever I would hear this person's name, I would get triggered, and as a coping mechanism, my brain totally just disregarded every memory of this particular person. I remember my friends in school being so angry at me because I was pretending to not remember someone who I loved, when the reality of it was that my brain at the time could not cope with the memory of that person because it just brought so much pain and despair and hopelessness and all these negative and really dark thoughts and feelings that my brain just went, okay, we're just going to forget it, we're just going to repress it, we don't need these memories if they're going to hurt us. I'd say I had no memory of that relationship or that person for a good 2-3 months probably. So yeah, I guess that sort of like shows how it affected me. It's not just the negative thoughts and feelings and actions that come after it. My brain saw it as something that was so horrible and so awful to happen that it repressed the memories. When it came to my 4th relationship, I had this fear of rejection and abandonment and the fear that my partner was going to leave me, but it was a lot more amplified because of previous experiences. Because of these experiences that happened in my past, it made the fear a lot more amplified and exaggerated, and okay, this relationship did not end well either. And the thing that made it even worse is that the relationship ended the same way the previous one did. So when it ended, I was triggered back to all of these distressing thoughts and memories and feelings. I was essentially taken back to that place of the previous relationship, and I just couldn't deal with it, and I was very hostile and aggressive and distressed and scared because I had a mindset that I would do absolutely anything to stop this person from leaving me. And that is not a healthy mindset. Like, straight up, let me just tell you straight, that is not a healthy mindset. So I really struggled with that, because it wasn't just the end of a relationship between myself and said partner, but there was a lot of conflict around that. A lot of friends getting involved and putting in their comments and criticisms, and it just sort of amplified the situation a lot more, made me a lot more angry and upset and distressed. And I noticed a pattern. Whenever these relationships would end, I would go into a massive relapse, and this particular relationship essentially broke me. I had after the fourth relationship, I wasn't in a relationship for 2.5 years. Yes, in this 2.5 years, I did get attached to a few people, but every time I felt myself getting attached, or every time someone confessed their feelings towards me, I pushed it away, because I was so scared of all of it happening again in the exact same order. I would get attached, I would get in a relationship, I would get really close and dependent on this person, and then they'd leave. So I was so scared of this happening again, that with a lot of potential relationships and even close friendships, I would just push that person away, or I would just act so impulsive and irrational and out of order that I would scare them away, which isn't what I wanted. It caused a lot of conflict with many people. I was terrified to get close to anyone. I knew that if I got close to someone, and I still believe this, I knew that if I got close to someone, they would just leave and they would just walk out. A few years ago, I met this person, and they were really nice and really sweet, and I felt myself getting attached, and I was so in love with this person. I got into a relationship with them, and it was short-lived. The people that were around me when the actual breakup happened, I've had comments from people who were friends with me at that time saying that I had changed. I didn't have a relationship for 2.5 years. I didn't have that strong of an attachment or a dependency to someone. So when that person broke up with me, it triggered a lot. All the memories from previous relationships and attachments, all the grief and loss and fear and anger and sadness, it all just came back at once, and it destroyed me. I remember at the time, my friends around me were just, they saw me deteriorating because I was slipping back into such a bad relapse. This is what my friend said. She said that I got a lot more depressed. I pushed a lot of people away. I was a lot more lonely and isolated. I didn't have interest in talking to people. I was less bubbly, less energetic. That is true, but the fact that there was a physical change that the external world noticed is terrifying. And with all these previous relationships, whenever I would hear their names or see a picture of them, or if it was a particular date, I would feel all those feelings again. And I hated it. That relationship sort of triggered a series of attachments that were not ending well either. And I remember with one of my more recent attachments, when it didn't end well and I felt lonely, isolated, angry, scared, upset, I was in such a massive relapse. I said, if anything like this happens again, I will break. I physically, emotionally, mentally cannot take it anymore. Whenever things like this happen, it doesn't trigger the emotions of that single incident. I get reminded of every other person that has left before, and every other person that I've had conflict with, and every other person that I was attached to. Not good. The more attachments I have, the more dependent and desperate, and the more I would step out of my comfort zone to try and keep that person to stay, the more I would feel scared and angry and a lot more sensitive to things that shouldn't be making me feel this way. And what do you know? I said that if anything like that happened again, I would break, and it did. I got into an attachment, and damn it, I got into an attachment and I was really happy. I was really happy, and I felt over the moon. I felt like I was in a dream, because things weren't getting to me anymore, and this particular attachment helped a lot with trauma and processing trauma, and I was so happy, but I was a lot more sensitive to what was happening around me, and I was aware of what I was doing, and I didn't want to do that. And then it didn't end well, and yeah, here I am now. I feel scared, angry, upset, lonely. I feel like I can't talk to anyone. I feel like I shouldn't talk to anyone. This particular incident triggered a lot. It sent me on downhill. I almost got sectioned. I was 1 foot into inpatient. And yeah, it's weird to think that something so simple as having a close friend or a partner can traumatize you. But there is one thing to get out of this. I wouldn't be seeking professional help, and I would not have professional help if it wasn't for these things happening. After one of my relationships, I had a massive relapse and ended up in hospital. But then I was referred to CAMHS and I got help. It wasn't good help, but it was help, and it put my name on the system. I had more issues with attachments later on, a few years later. That was, for me, the catalyst. I said to myself, I'm sick of this happening. So many people have left and it's causing so much pain. I don't want this to happen anymore, so I'm going to get help. My last therapist was awful and rubbish, but that doesn't mean every therapist is going to be like that. I would not be getting help if these things didn't happen, and I need help. I would not have any of my diagnoses. I would not have my treatment. I would not know such lovely people. If I didn't have these things happen to me, I wouldn't be in the idol community. I wouldn't have such amazing friends. There are people that you meet and things that happen because of terrible circumstances, but you are thankful for it, because if it did not happen, you would not have something you cherish so much now. That was a video. That was a really personal video. I hope you sort of learnt some sort of insight. I'm really dissociated. I'm sorry. I hope you learnt something.